Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's live discussion on season 5 of The Expanse. We're here to sort of do a season wrap up to talk about the season as a whole and what we thought of the season overall and the various storylines and what's not. And here joining me, we have all the guests I've had throughout the season. First, starting with the Mr. Earth first here, down here, Mr. Don Willi. Thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, listen, I'm glad to be here. Someone has to defend our home turf, from miscreants. A bunch of damn just ingrates.
All right. And also joining regular host, who I suppose is setting up his new colony on Laconia, Mr. Darrin from D's Reviews. Thanks so much for joining, Darrin.
Hey, Mark. Really excited to be here. Glad to chat with Alyssa and Don and yourself about this season. Do a little catch up. Missed a few there, so it's going to be nice to kind of be able to wrap it all up together. I'm really excited about this.
And also, of course, joining who didn't get a chance to talk about the finale, so I guess we'll talk a bit about that now. Bratna, Alyssa, thanks so much.
Yeah, it's great to be here with all three of you at once. I don't know if the YouTube can handle all four of us together, but we'll try not to blow up the internet. We'll see if we can make it work. But good to be here and talking about the season.
Cool. All right. So I wanted to start with our feelings of the season overall. And to some complaints, I've asked my guests to sort of rank the seasons in order from the least favorite to the favorite, which I love all of the seasons. So it was actually harder for me to do, although if you saw my overall review of season 5, you already know my thoughts. So I'm going to start with the guest. I guess, Don, we'll start with you. How would you rank season 5 compared to the other seasons? Which seasons is your least favorite and which one would you think is your most favorite?
Okay, so I think my most favorite, it's a toss-up between 3 and 4 for most favorite, because 3 had so much stuff in there that was unexpected, and the way that the mid-season break happened, you would have thought that was the end of season 3, and it was like, no, we still got more stuff for you. Like, oh, okay, I'll take it. Yes, come on, let's go. So you know what? I'm gonna go with season 3, followed by season 4, then season 5, 2, and 1.
Very interesting. And Darrin, what would be your ratings?
As one of those complaining about ranking these seasons because they are all awesome. Just ask Rotten Tomatoes. It's kind of tough. I would probably put season 4 as my least favorite, only in the sense that with all the planetary stuff that happened, there was a lot of other things that I missed in sort of the larger storyline. It just, for the larger bits that the Expanse kind of covers, that was kind of tiny, in which case it's kind of my least favorite. 1, maybe after that, and that's only because they were still figuring out their lighting and their stagecraft, their sound design and everything. So there's a little imbalance in that. After that, it gets a little tough because I recently rewatched 3, and even though that mid-season break kind of throws things off and effectively what book 3 is really in a shrunk period of time, God, it could just go straight off and just run through that first half of the season is awesome, which again makes me think of 2, which I think is really one of the best fully summed seasons. 5, look, it's either number 1 or number 2 on the list. It's got great storylines. I might only put it like number 2 only because I feel it's a little stuttered at points, and there's some stuff that I think could be a little bit more efficient in the storytelling. But what it does so well, and there's so many awesome moments. So I don't know. That's kind of a toss-up. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep 5 and 2 and 3 sort of jumbling around there, right in the top.
But basically, you're saying 4, 1, 3, 5, 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go with that one. Yeah. Thank you for helping me decide.
I was just trying to decipher. But yeah, anyway, Alyssa.
So we're going from least to best?
Yes.
Well, now I'm afraid to start with my least because not only am I at odds with Don, but apparently a lot of people in the chat. But
oh, really?
Because there's only one season that really stands out as being way below all the others, and it's easily season 3 is the worst. I hated the mid-season break. And remember, I'm not a book reader, so I always heard that, if you read the books, it's different. I'm like, wait, what? We're on a whole different show now? That should have been a whole different season. Also, they tried to cram all of book 3 into half of a season. It was way too rushed. I did not follow it. I did not care about that second half of the season at all. I did not like any of the characters. I did not like Clarissa as a character. I actually like her a little better in season 5, even though the actress still sucks. But it was just season 3 is still good. Because Expanse is good overall as a show. Yeah. And there's no bad season. I can't say that it was a bad season, but just compared to the others, it's easily the worst. So I'm at odds with pretty much everybody else, it seems like. And then it gets a little hairier for me. And I do have to give a disclaimer. I told this to Mark ahead of time, is I have not watched season 1 and 2 in a little while. So my memory on them is a little fuzzy. So coming up after season 3, there's a big jump forward. And I'm kind of stuck between 4 and 1. And I'm going to go ahead and say 1. Probably because I seem to recall that there were some issues that I had with it that they were able to fix. 4, I loved. I feel like 4 is when the first year when they were on Prime. I feel like the show took a big leap forward in quality. So I have to put 4 up there. And then between 2 and 5, it's hard. I've always said 2 is my favorite. But now it's been a couple of years since I've seen it, and 5 is fresher in my head. So I think just by default, 5 will be ranked above 2. But if eventually I will, sometime before season 6, I will do a full rewatch. And at that point, I may then say, no, 2 is my top. But I'm just going to give it to 5 just because I just watched it and it's fresher in my head. So then from least to worst, it's 3, 1, 4, 2, 5.
That's very interesting. We've all come up with like very different rankings, and in the chat, it seems like they're very split. A lot of different rankings in there as well. Like Sentient, Sentient has 3 as the best. Okay, I'm sorry, it went in different direction. But yeah, I've seen totally different rankings. But for me, for my least favorite is 1. I think that, and I have seen all seasons somewhat recently, like within the past year or so, and I've watched them multiple times too, because I'm obsessed with this show. But for me, 1 is my least favorite, and it has Alyssa said, and I completely agree and shadow this agreement, that there's no such thing as a bad season of The Expanse. All the seasons are great, but for me, 1 is when, and kind of what Darrin was saying, that they were really finding their footing there. They didn't really, I think they improved so much as showrunners just overall. I think Darrin brought up lighting and stuff, and now that he mentions it, yeah, that's true. But I think also mainly the writing, that they the season didn't flow as well, and I think they took the characters in some weird directions that kind of interfered with the stories by like creating conflicts between Amos and Holden. I thought that was a bit confusing, and Amos came off as more as an asshole in season 1, and I didn't really like him as much. And so I just think And plus, Miller's story, I think, was way too confusing. Anyone who hadn't read the books, like a lot of people who I say, hey, watch The Expanse, they have a hard time getting through season 1 because they don't know, have no idea what the hell is going on, because it is kind of complicated. So, and I always have to tell them, look, just go through season 1, you'll get to the better stuff. And again, I will say, so for me, 1 is the very clear at the bottom, and then it gets a bit murky after that. Next one up for me is I'm stuck between seasons 3 and 4. I think they're kind of on par with each other. I think season 4 is more cohesive and it's a better season and elevates the books, but I think the source material it had to work with was the weakest. Like, it's my least favorite book, and I look back on season 4 and it does seem like, yeah, that each individual episode is less interesting to me than other seasons, whereas season 3 is kind of, I mean, I do agree with Alyssa a lot on season 3, but it doesn't bother me as much that the pacing was totally off. I think the first half of season 3 moved way too slowly, and the second half moved way too quick. And I guess part of me is like a snooty book reader, because the second half of season 3, I felt they rushed. They left, it's my favorite book, and they left out a lot of the great things that made that book so great, and that really bothered me. But at the same time, there's individual episodes in season 3, such as the whole conflict between, in the first half, the whole conflict between the mutiny on the UNN ship was fucking amazing. And the second half, you have stuff like them trying to destroy the Rosinante, and Rosinante slipping into the ring gate, and that scene where Holden was on the station and experienced that weird shit. Like, those were amazing moments. So it's kind of, I like seasons 3 and 4 almost equally, but for vastly different reasons. But I think I would give the slight edge to season 4 because season 3 was so disjointed and season 4 was more together. So for me, it would go 1, 4, 3, and then seasons 2 and 5. It actually seems common that 2 and 5 are at the top, and I'm sort of stuck between those two seasons. But ultimately, I will also give the edge to season 5, and so say season 2 is my second favorite. Season 2 has my favorite episode of the entire show, the one with Miller and the arrows going towards the Earth. Like, that is still the best episode of the entire show. Probably one of my favorite episodes of all television. It's what really got me to love The Expanse. But season 2 does drag a bit towards in the second half after they finish that and they get into the book 2 material, like the whole storyline with the guy who, oh, this is how I created the Epstein Drive. Like, I didn't give a fuck about that. I thought it was a waste of time. and so that's why I have to give the slight edge to season 5. And season 5, does have its own issues, which I'm sure we'll get into shortly. A lot of people thought that was poorly paced, but honestly, I think season 5 was the best paced season out of all of them. It was the most emotional. It had the strongest character stories. So I'm going to have to say season 5 was the best season overall.
Mark, I have a question. Point of clarification. You said between seasons 4 and 3, you're giving season 4 the edge. And then you went 1, 4, 3.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Shit.
So which is it?
All right. No, 4 is definitely edge over 3. So it goes 1, 3, 4, 2, 5.
All right, that's what I thought you meant.
I have to agree with Sentient in the chat, who mentions that it's signs of a great show that we all have different rankings. And I think that's true, especially when we're like, well, this zone, everything's kind of a jumble. Which is this and better? So, yeah, what is your favorite foods? Rank them. They're all good.
And Sentient mentions that season 3 was rushed because it got canceled. And I do think that's, I've heard a lot of arguments against it. Oh, they didn't know they were getting canceled. Maybe not, but I'm sure they had a feeling that they might be. And I think that's why, we better cram all book 3 in here, but otherwise we don't want to end the season on a cliffhanger. And they did say that it was very important that they not end the season on a cliffhanger. So, and we know that from recent seasons, they're kind of bullshitting about a certain character's death. Oh, yeah, sure, we planned it all along. So I think they were kind of bullshitting about that it was really, that was why season 3. So it wasn't necessarily their fault. It's because they thought correctly that they wouldn't be able to finish the story if they stopped midway through book 3, so they try to cram it all. So there is circumstantial stuff involved in that, but it isn't. I mean, I just brought this up. The reason why I brought this up, and I know it's hard, Darrin, because I've heard many opinions, not just from one person, but from several people over the internet, that they felt that season 5 was not as good as the first 3 seasons as The Expanse. That they actually felt that since it got to Amazon, the show got worse. That season 4 and 5 are the clear worst seasons of the show.
Nah, I can't really agree with that. I mean, season 5, I am actually looking forward to rewatching, just because then I can binge through a whole chunk, and so I can really. That is my kind of curious things, because I've rewatched so many of the past seasons in a binge manner. They have a different feel. So I'm really curious to see how this season really compares, if I can do that and see if the pacing all kind of links together a little bit more from a larger storyline than it does maybe it might have felt from an individual by individual episode basis.
Yeah, I definitely can't agree with that at all. The production value is like, not what Darrin was saying, but like what you were saying.
Yeah.
The production value is, to me, like very clearly got better when they went to Amazon. It looked like they have a higher budget. I mean, it just was like, and I still have season 2 as my second favorite season, possibly my first favorite season upon rewatch. But no, I don't agree at all that the Amazon seasons are the worst. I have them both, I think, in my top 3. So no, don't agree.
Yeah, no, that is something I completely disagreed with as well.
Well, even from a writing standpoint, I think, like you were mentioning before, first season a little jumpy. I think they've gotten so much a greater grasp on characters and reconnecting and having storylines go from the beginning to the end and have interweaving. I think they've cleaned that up so much better than they did in the first couple of seasons.
Yeah.
Well, if I can chime in real quick, I think one of the big issues might be the fact that in season 5, we didn't have as much interaction with the Rossi crew together as we did in the previous seasons. So the story, to a certain extent, felt a little disjointed because, we're used to seeing this crew together. It'd be like watching Star Trek, and then for like a whole season, it's like Kirk is by himself, Spock is by himself, McCoy is by himself, and then you got like maybe the adventures of like Chekhov and Sulu. You'd be like, yeah, wow. Even if they have good stories, you're like, something feels off here. So, it's not that it's bad, but I can see where people might be like, season 5 is just something's off about it. And
yeah,
I think it's splitting up the characters and not really having we brought in secondary characters, but because they didn't get introduced earlier, or if they were introduced, they were so far in the background that now it's kind of like, okay, I recognize you're here, but why are you important? They were kind of doing the Game of Thrones thing a little bit, but with Game of Thrones, when you had those background characters, some of them were there for so long that it's like once they started to become more major players, is like you kind of were already used to them because they had been there for like 3 seasons already. Whereas a lot of the characters who were background maybe like a season ago are now getting pushed to the forefront, or maybe they were background 2 seasons ago, they weren't in last season, and now like Monica, why is Monica important again? I just remember her being an annoying reporter that almost got Holden killed. Or Clarissa, Like, all right, I just remember her trying to kill everybody. Why the hell is she so important now? So I think that the fact that you had so many switches in perspective in terms of who was going to be like leading the charge in different storylines and who was following them was the thing that kind of might have thrown people off. I know it threw me off just a little bit for a couple episodes, but once I got into the groove, I was like, all right, I'm digging this.
All right, so I did want to say in the chat, Matthew Ross says, I'm wondering if George R.R. Martin's association with the writers is the season for that, the reason why Game of Thrones has that Game of Thrones feeling. And I gotta say, this is what I said when I did my review of this book of Nemesis Games, is that when I first read this book, because I read like all the books, I think before season 3 came out, so the break between season 2 and 3. And when I read the first couple of books, I was like, I felt a very distinct feeling, a difference from the show. Like it didn't feel like the show had a totally different tone and feeling. And when I got to this book, book 5, I'm like, oh, this feels like the show. It's like they suddenly started writing it like the show, and not coincidentally, they wrote this book the same time they were writing season 1 of the show. And I talk about how I don't think that's a coincidence. And they actually start working in a lot of characters who first appeared in this book earlier in the show when they're doing season 2, like Drummer and Kotazar, who both of them didn't even appear until this book, but in the show they appeared in season 2. So I think it was the show's influence. And plus, this is the first book that really fleshed out the side characters, the Naomi, Amos, and Alex. And that was also, they were fleshed out a lot more in the show. So I think all of that had an influence on this book. So I think the show had a big influence on the book. So it's interesting to see the show's interpretation of this book. And it's interesting, Don, you mentioned the fact that all the characters separate and how that could throw people off. In the book, the reason why they did that is because they could have viewpoint chapters from characters like Alex and Amos and Naomi, and they've never had viewpoint chapters before, so they were never fleshed out. They were kind of just like side characters. And I honestly think that, and I do understand how, as a show watcher, that may throw you off, that just suddenly separating the crew, but I honestly like that aspect of it. I like the fact that it has the Game of Thrones sort of aspect where we follow separate different storylines. We're not just, doesn't have a Star Trek feel where this is the crew and they're always together. And it shows, and in that way, it explored the various characters more than it could had they stayed together. Like for Holden, we see what it's like when he's not with his crew and how much that fucks over the head. For Naomi, we got into a whole backstory with how she used to be with the Belter and be seeing her back with the Belter family. For Amos, we explore his backstory a bit and see how he starts to fall apart without the his crew to keep him steady. And with Alex, they kind of just wasted him. But anyway. But anyway, if you guys don't have any further thoughts on this.
No, I'm just going to say that I think that it's kind of a nice thing about this season is because we'd established these characters, we could separate them and, see their own individual adventures. It reinforces while they're a family, which is kind of a constant theme throughout this season, and why we want them back together and why they all know, they are better together than they are, individually. So it does reinforce that, but yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of split between wanting to see everyone together or spending the season going, so when do you guys get back together?
I'm on the camp of I liked seeing them separate, assuming that they would be together by the end of the season and then be together for the next season, which was my assumption, and it turned out to be the case. And so as long as that was the case and we're going to get them back together, I was actually happy, as you said, Mark, to explore all their different backstories and to really explore each character individually. I thought it worked really well. I wouldn't want them to do that forever, but for one season, I thought it worked really well.
Yeah, and Doc Coburn in the chat made the same point that at least they came back together at the end instead of having the characters keep diverging like some kind of weird fractal and chaos theory like Game of Thrones did. Like, yeah, like Jon Snow took like 6 seasons before he started interacting with other characters. So yeah, no, I think it worked, and also I'll make what maybe for some book readers a controversial statement by saying I actually felt, because people were saying they thought season 4 was better than book 4, that they did a better job, which I totally agree with, but I actually felt the same for this season for book 5, which a lot of book readers may disagree with me on because that a lot of people cite that as their favorite book. For me, it wasn't actually my favorite book because I actually felt that the first half of the book was kind of boring. And I thought that the show actually did a better job and to keep it more interesting throughout. Now, I've seen several people in the chat voice the opinion they thought that the pacing at the end of the season kind of dipped and got kind of stretched out and boring, which I think is definitely true of Naomi's storyline. But I think overall, even though it did kind of stretch that part of it out, they kept it interesting with like the Amos, with the Amos and the Avasarala stuff. I don't know what I'm curious to hear your guys' opinion on whether or not you agree with the fact that the end of the season might have been stretched out a bit too much.
I think some of the storylines definitely. I mean, we'll get to it, I guess, more in specifics when we get into each section. But I definitely felt like the drummer stuff got kind of really stretched. They may have dwelt a little bit on Naomi's, but I also thought that was kind of good having those focuses. I mean, I think I agree with Alyssa there that a chance to tell those little individual stories and really get a focus on each individualized character does have its value. But yeah, I mean, I can see where the pacing was definitely in a few of those parts, but I think that's also because you had so many separate stories. It was like, well, we have to focus on finishing up this story. Then we got to focus on finishing up this story. Then we got to get back to these 2 stories. And then it was like, okay, this should have been faster, it felt like. So, I mean, I get that.
The only one that I've really felt was probably stretched out was Naomi's. I think that they could have, it's like they just didn't have, what episode was that when she finally took off? Like episode 6 or 7?
7, yeah.
6, the end of 7. Like they didn't have 3 episodes worth of stuff for her, so they just kind of had to stretch it. But other than that, I didn't think any of the other storylines were too stretchy. Drummers, I thought was actually better at the end. I hated it for the first like 6 or 7 episodes. But her storyline, I feel like they were just stretching it in the beginning, trying to like give her. But we'll talk about it, I'm sure, when we get into all the storylines. But
oh yeah, sure.
Yeah. But
yeah, let's go ahead and do that then. Let's start jumping into the various.
Captain now, Camina later.
yeah.
So yeah, I want to just briefly give an overview of how we felt of each of the different storylines. And the main question I want to ask is, did the storyline work and how well did it work? So let's start with the James Holden storyline. So do we think this storyline worked or how well it worked? For me, I felt this was another front-loaded storyline that worked maybe better towards the beginning of the season, because seeing him interact with how he's so depressed, he keeps looking after the pictures of all of his crewmates. He's lonely. It was a nice touch. And the death of Fred Johnson, which is super intense, and then getting pimp slapped by that thing that sold the proto-molecule, that was pretty intense. But once he sort of left and went to the Rosinante, I thought his storyline became less interesting, and it was mainly just, let's check in with him, Bull, and Monica, and them arguing about shit. I mean, it was still good. Like, I don't think it sucked towards the end. And I thought maybe this storyline perhaps was also stretched out a little bit towards the end. But I mean, we got that intense fight scene where, they thought they were destroying the proto-molecule, but turns out it wasn't. But then when it all comes back together, and you do see a character arc for Holden as well, as he learns, like at first he's like, "Oh, I'm coming with you, Naomi." Yeah, definitely. And she's like, "No." And then he learns to actually put the part of the molecule, the fact that his love for Naomi aside, and realize that he needs to focus on like saving, the world first. But then when it comes down to it, he chooses to go after Naomi even after Bull's like, "Whoa, we're running out of fuel," and just, "Are you fucking kidding me right now? Fuck off." So he still values the importance of family, but he does know when to sort of set it aside and whatnot. And of course, that fight scene was at the space battle at the end was amazing. But I think I'll talk more about that when we get the Drummer's storyline. But anyway, curious. I guess we'll start with you, Alyssa. Did this storyline work for you, or how well did it work?
Yeah, I mean, it worked. What I really found very interesting about Holden this year is that this is the first year where he is not front and center, and I found that refreshing, that they spent more of the focus on Amos and Naomi specifically. And I really like that. I don't need, even though I'm a longtime Star Trek fan, I don't always need to have the captain or the one, in the case of Discovery, Michael Burnham, the one character who has to be the standout character all the time. I found it very interesting that the show let Holden take a step back a little bit this year, and that it worked. The whole show didn't fall apart not having Holden as the front and center main character. So that's, and so far as that's why I think it worked. That they were able to pull Holden back a little bit, and the whole show didn't fall apart. The show still kept going, and it allowed other characters to kind of step forward a little bit, specifically Amos and Naomi this season. But it wasn't an overall like really amazing storyline, and I do agree with you that it probably did drag a little bit in the end as well, especially when they went onto the Rosinante. But I don't know. That's why I think it worked, because Holden was able to take a step back a little bit, and the show still worked. So that's what I think.
So you get a lot of people agreeing with you in the chat. George is saying he agrees with you about Naomi and Drummer's storyline. Thought the same exact thing. And Matthew agrees with you on Holden's storyline, that pulling away from Holden allowed the other characters to grow, which I also agree that is definitely the case. I also want to mention in the chat, Matthew Ross says, "Crab spiders, we need a whole ship of those things," and then they say resistance is futile. No, we don't need another Borg imitation, but a whole ship of those things would be cool. Anyway, Mr. Darrin, these reviews, what did you think of Holden's storyline?
I'm gonna have to agree with you and Alyssa and the chat pretty much on all those points. I did think that it was a nice difference to not have a Holden centric season, that we did get to spend time on the other characters. Also that his, like, right in the middle of the season, right in the middle of his stuff, he was just floating in space, just checking in with people on the radio. So great opening, great ending, middle not so interesting. And I think to me that along with some of the others is one of the pacing issues with this season. Why I think I say it's going to be more interesting binging it and going through chunks of episodes at a time versus this individual rollout, to see if that adjusts how the pacing feels, or if it does still feel like we get great moments and focuses on each one, but then in between all those moments with everyone else just doesn't do much. But yeah.
Cool. Mr. Erta first. What were your feelings on the James Holden storyline?
They should have given him a pet. I mean, hey, think about something. Look at how much more interesting I look just having a pet here. So, you give him something to care about. He's not just moping around the ship. I can't find Naomi. What happened to Naomi? Anybody know who Naomi is? Shut up, Bull. I'm going for Naomi. yeah, I mean, he would have had, someone else to care about, wouldn't been all, I'm depressed because my girl isn't here. Oh, my girl is about to die. I'm going to lose everything. Let's go fight to die to save her, which means I'll never see her again. But as long as she's safe, everything is fine. Give him some other motivation throughout the season. This way, during that middle section, he's not just, the boring guy moping around the ship, like, being like, Monica, I don't have time for this. Shut up, Bull. I mean, that's kind of how I felt about it.
So do you think it worked?
No, he should have had a pet. Got it. We haven't seen any pets on the Expanse at all, right?
But couldn't you say that Monica sort of filled that role?
No, Monica.
He had to go and rescue her. She bothered him. Then he had to go and rescue her, and then she saved his life. I mean, it's a nice kind of take there.
I kind of agree. I think a cat would have done wonders for Holden.
Give him a beagle like Archer, right? Now Monica was just Monica, except without a camera this time around, or without sticking a microphone in people's faces. That's, listen, no. Let me not say that, because Monica was more interesting. She did add value to the crew, as opposed to just being the annoying person with the microphone. And yes, so how do you feel being the hero of the galaxy, Mr. Holden, Mr. James Holden? Like, damn thing out of my face, woman.
So.
No, I have to say that, I definitely, Monica earned my respect this season. Before, she was annoying, and now I'm like, look, she's gonna fight and challenge and battle, and she can figure stuff out, and she's got, cameras in her eyes. So she's doing good now. I'm pro Monica. Don't get me wrong.
So I was gonna say, Don, you think that that Holden should have a beagle like Archer, so maybe he could have more faith in the heart. Heart will take him.
Oh,
I had to fit it in.
Yeah, you knew it was coming. Like every week,
Hurts so much.
You had to know it was coming, especially when the beagle like Archer reference came up. I knew it was coming. Don, if you're talking, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, look, I couldn't think of any other famous sci-fi people who had pets. I mean, think about it. We haven't.
Not a famous one, but a recent one. Book on season 3 of Discovery had a cat.
She's a queen. Yeah, but see, here's the difference. They got artificial gravity on those ships.
And Data had a cat too.
Spock, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look, honestly speaking, I don't think a cat would fit in that particular environment. Especially I think you could have outfitted the beagle with some little magnetic boots and all that. I don't think you would have been able to do that with a cat.
Also, I have to correct you that you're saying there's no pets on the Expanse, but you're forgetting about Miller's bird.
I'm just waiting for the cat to be like, here comes the juice. Little cat suits.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's go ahead and. Oh yeah, go ahead, Alyssa.
Oh, I just wanted to add on to the Monica conversation. Yet another season 3 character who is better in another season, and yet another reason I didn't like season 3. Another character I did not like in season 3, who I liked a little. I didn't love her in season 5, but as Darrin said, she was less annoying in season 3 or season 5 rather.
I will say with Monica, they expanded her role in this season from the book. Like in the book, she only appeared in that first half. She didn't go in the Rosinante with Holden. I actually liked that dynamic better. I think that was a really smart decision. I think more than just giving Holden someone, a main character to interact with, she was also added an interesting dynamic to keep him grounded. So actually, that was one of the reasons why, one of the things I thought the show improved upon the books. But anyway, yeah, let's go ahead and move over to the next storyline and ask if it worked or not. And let's talk about Naomi, which some could argue was the sort of heart of the season. Let's go ahead and roll in Marco and Philip and that whole Pella crew as well. It was an interesting choice that Marco didn't really appear until episode 4 when the asteroids dropped. I remember we talked about that in our coverage of the first 3 episodes, that they just showed him in the background, like looking at maps and going. And I actually thought that was actually a pretty smart move. Like, I thought that worked well to sort of foreshadow him. And as far as Naomi, I think her storyline also took a little bit to get going. Like, for those first 3 episodes, even the first 4 episodes, she didn't really do much. And in the middle of the seasons where she really shined, and then, as we pointed out, she was kind of stuck on that ship for the last couple episodes. But I ultimately loved the storyline. I think it was a huge improvement on the book, personally. I think that we got a lot more into her character, even than what the show has done previously. And I think having the dynamic of how much she diving deep into that regret of abandoning her son and trying desperately to make up for that, to pull him back, which is an impossible task because he's indoctrinated by maniacal master manipulator, who is now the solar system's greatest villain. And so it was an impossible task, one in which she was never going to accomplish, but it was really tragic to see, and I thought it was great drama. And I loved the risk that seeing her jump into space like that was one of the best moments in the show, in my opinion. Seeing her rescue at the end, where she's willing to jump off of the doomed ship in order to save her family, to save Alex. And her rescue was beautifully filmed and beautifully acted. So I think, and I echo a lot of people's feelings that this was definitely her best season. Like, the actress mentioned in interviews even before the season aired that it was her best season, and she loved the season the most. And I think that makes sense from her, definitely from her character standpoint. It wasn't just a blowing smoke, oh, this is the best season yet, which everyone says every season. I think it actually makes a lot of sense for her. So anyway, Darrin, we'll start with you if you got your camera all fixed up. What you felt about Naomi's storyline?
Yeah, I really like Naomi's storyline. I agree, there did feel to be a little up and down. There was some stuff that felt a little dragged. Some stuff, I don't know, was a little off. But the fact that we got to go into so much more. One of the things I did like about 4, them focusing on, was her first experience going on to a planet and walking around. And it was one of those beautiful bits in the opening of season 4. And we got in, and the chance to go a little bit more into her now and where she came from and that connection with the belt. And I'm glad that we got to spend time with that. Certainly, I have to agree, the space jump moments, both of them, were incredible bits, and Dominic Tipper just did an amazing job pulling emotion, whether it be from trying to reach out to Philip or wondering if she had saved the Rossi or not, and being left in that those moments of confusion, to leaping out into space, to the panic of, am I going to die or not? I mean, there was so much that she got to carry emotionally in this season. Did it work? Hell yeah, it worked. We're still talking about it. You know, it worked really well. I mean, obviously, she also had to interact with Philip and Marco, and my opinion on them is very well established throughout this season.
Well, I mean, talk again. What's it? Because
well, I appreciate the work that Alexander Koenig, God, I can't remember his last name.
Yeah.
Who does Keon? Thank you. Who does Marco? And I appreciate the work that he has done into the character, and I know that he is doing, a good job. A lot of people like him as an antagonist. I'm personally am not one of those. He doesn't frighten me. He doesn't scare me. I see him as a poser. And if that is ultimately what he is trying to portray underneath his layers, and that's just what I'm looking at, hey, then power to him as a performer. To me, it was one of the weaker aspects of this because wow, what Marco has done is amazing. And the brilliance behind it and the whole idea and bringing the belt together and the back and forth are all brilliant plans. Marco, just as a character, does not frighten me. He doesn't make me uncomfortable. I don't get that feeling of dread off of him. I feel like he just wants to be the big kid on the block. So that is, to me, one of the weaker things. We have seen so many great villains and so many strong characters, and for someone like this, who to me just isn't really reflecting that, is kind of a bummer. I think Philip did a lot better job in portraying a lot of those conflicted emotions between trying to listen to his father and trying to connect with his mom. And is that the emotional connection that he wants? But now he's feeling betrayed. And is he listening to his mom and what she has done, or is his dad? I think he played a lot of that back and forth really well. And I felt a lot for Philip. And I think some of the scenes between him and Naomi were some of the stronger ones. Though I think that was more of Naomi kind of carrying that emotional strength in those scenes. But ultimately, yeah, as I said, I think that this all really worked. I think it told the story, and it certainly gave us the feeling and impressions of what we needed. The big pull away I got from this is the deep dive into how long you can actually survive in outer space in a vacuum, which is tremendously longer than I thought it would be under the right circumstances, which is just a whole fascinating thing that I love. But that was a super cool bit, and yeah, I'm really glad we got to have all those moments.
Now, I do have to ask Doc Coburn in the chat, saying that she did spend too much time on the chain smoker, but other than that, it was great. What's the chain smoker? I've heard that referred to before, and I'm not sure what that means. I've heard some people refer to Avasarala as the chain smoker because she has that raspy voice, and they think it's from smoking too much cigarettes, but I don't think that's the reference here.
I can't help with that one.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe Doc will clarify in the chat. So anyway, Don, how did you like those stinking belters that throw rocks at your home?
Oh, the ship, the Chetsamoka.
Oh, that's the chain smoker?
I think that's what Doc Corbin's saying there.
Okay.
In the
oh, Texcamo. Okay, gotcha. All right, because it kind of sounds like chain smoker. Okay. Anyway, Don, you can complain about those damn belters.
Well, listen. At the end of the day, Naomi's storyline worked because the acting worked. Put into the hands of a lesser thespian, it all falls apart and looks silly, right? But here we were given multiple performances of someone going through inner turmoil, self-sacrifice, going through the 5 stages of grief to a certain extent. And, again, Mark, you talked earlier about how this season was about family, and this was someone who was willing to do anything to see her family be whole. She tried to rectify a big mistake from the past, and she, basically was put on notice that some things cannot be rectified. Once certain things are broken, they are broken for good. And unfortunately, it almost cost her not only her life but the life of her new family. Lives of her new family, I should say. Yeah. So again, like I said, had it not been for the talented actress that does portray Naomi, we could be having a much different conversation about this. Now, was the storyline stretched out? Yes, it definitely was. But did you really notice it through, through the scenes where, she's banging on the ship and trying to keep her wits about her with, no oxygen and the CO2 creeping in, and her trying to figure out which wire to cut in order to splice this message together. When she's come to the realization that no, these guys are still on their way, and I have to figure out some way to let them know, stop, get out of here. This is, you're going to explode. What she went through with her fellow Belters on the ship, where she's trying to explain to Philip, like, look, I didn't want to leave you, but your father was a fucking psycho and he left me no choice. It was like, yeah, and her trying to explain to him, like, the only person that Marco Inaros cares about is Marco Inaros. He'll let everyone die for his cause, and he's never going to be willing to sacrifice himself for anyone else, or anything else. Like, no. Marco does not go down with the ship. The ship goes down, and you're on it. And yeah, look, as much as I give the Belters shit for being Belters, look, I said it before, the actor that portrays Marco Inaros, he doesn't give off threatening to me. When you've been in the room with actual, with people who may have killed someone, there is a certain presence and a certain gravitas to them being in the room, where it's like, even if they may not be the one to commit violence can still happen, from whatever words that they might speak. And that's, like I said, since you said wrap them all up together, that was the only thing that for me was missing with Marco. Like I watched the scene earlier, like a little while ago with them kind of holding him in that airlock and deciding whether or not they were going to kill him. And there he came off as kind of pathetic. It was like, all right, what are we going to do with this guy? We kill him or we let him live? And so see him now, like he had the big speech and all that stuff. And I was like, it was a speech. I'm not going to say he delivered it poorly, but it's just, look, like, for example, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, when those guys, delivered monologues, you believe that, yes, Tony Montana is going to kill me if I say the wrong thing.
Like Dunkachino. Hoo-ah! Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, sorry. There's a couple things that I wanted to respond to in the chat. Doc Coburn says Marco was a good manipulator, narcissist, not somebody you'd fear, but definitely somebody you don't want stealing the keys to the bloody solar system. And I utterly agree with that. I think that is a very good description of him. And I also will say that I believe that in season 4, he wasn't done as well, writing wise and acting wise. I think they really much improved upon that in season 5. And as far as him not looking sort of menacing, villainous, and maniacal, I think that one scene where he killed Serge and he gave that like nasty look to the camera, read a drummer, sort of the satisfied, like, I think he was scary in that moment. I thought he was a boss villain in that moment, personally. But I do wonder, and I wonder just because all three of you seem to have a lesser opinion of Marco than I do, so I do wonder if part of that is I'm bringing stuff in from the books because he was written so well in the books, and maybe I've already convinced myself he was a great villain before I even watched the show, which is possible because he was my favorite villain from the books. So I might be bringing that in with me, but personally, I'm not disappointed with his portrayal in the show. But anyway, more shitting on Marco. Let's go to Alyssa and what she thought of this whole story.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the good stuff first. I'll start with Naomi before I do my shitting on Marco. But I was actually noticing at the start of our discussion, people were talking shit about Naomi's storyline, and I loved Naomi's storyline. And yes, as I mentioned earlier, it does drag a little bit. They stretch it out a little bit. The like episodes 8 and 9, I think, her whole thing on the ship. But otherwise, it was absolutely beautiful, this story. I loved, and kind of going along with what I said about Holden, how they allow Holden to step back, they allow Naomi to step forward, and part of that had to be her saying to Holden, no, you got to stay here. I have to do this on my own. This is something that is very personal. It's something that I have to do on my own. And yeah, and if Holden had gone along with her, like, he would have just ruined everything, like, for her and story-wise. So this was much better to allow her to go and do this for her own. And her story was really well done, and especially with Philip, her interactions with Philip. I'm not going to shit on Philip. I'll shit on Marco. But I had predicted, because I hadn't read the books, that Philip was going to turn on Marco, because that's the like stereotypical, like, that's the cliche thing. So I was glad they didn't do that. I understand they were following the book, so it's the books that didn't do that. But still, it just speaks to how interesting and complex the story is overall, is that they went in a more interesting direction, where I still don't feel like Philip is still totally in Marco's clutches for forever. And I don't know how the other books go, but like, I could still see that he's still struggling with that, and still struggling with how he's being clearly manipulated and used by his father. So I think he's a very interesting character, and his interactions with Naomi, a lot of their conversations were really heartfelt and were really gold. And I will echo what was said earlier about the space scenes. I love the one in the finale when it was so beautifully shot when Bobby saves her and you just kind of hear Bobby's voice. That was so good. And now I'll shit on Marco time. Yeah, so playing off with what Don said earlier about how he only cares about himself, and if the ship is going down, he's not on it. You're on that ship. He's not sacrificing shit. 100%. And that is, and Mark doesn't like it when I say he's a mustache twirly villain, but that's exactly why he is, because he you look at his cause and go, oh, like this is a multi-angle cause. It's very complex. The cause is, but he doesn't give a shit about the cause in reality. He only cares about himself. This is all about him. The cause is just an excuse for him to have power. When it comes down to it, if it's the choice between Marco and the cause, Marco's choosing Marco. So don't mix up the complexity of the cause with the complexity of the character. The character, I'm sorry, but he was two-dimensional in that scene you mentioned before, Mark. Sorry, Mark. Had a flashback to your childhood. The scene that you mentioned before where in the finale where he looked at the camera and looked all evil, that wasn't menacing to me. That was the equivalent of that scene you complained about in Discovery Season 3 with that villain like killing off her nephew or whatever to show how evil she was. That's what that was to me. That wasn't menacing at all. And I know you completely disagree, but that's just because I am already looking at Marco that way when I see that scene. So that's just how I viewed it. But it's fine. Not every villain has to be the best. It still worked for the story, especially his relationship with Philip and how he manipulated him and how that affected Philip's character, which ultimately affected Naomi's character. So it all still worked. I'm not complaining. Not every villain has to be the best, but it just wasn't the best for me.
I mean, yeah, we're gonna have to agree to disagree on Marco because I guess I'm going to have to with all three of you because I actually really liked them. But for me, like the one last thing I'll say on the point, which of course I obviously disagree that he was a two-dimensional mustache twirly villain, and yeah, but to me, the one thing I will say is I'm reminded of Kai Wynn. Is who I'm reminded of because I just did a review of Deep Space Nine when I talked about how she turns evil at the end. So many people were like, "Oh, it doesn't make sense that she would abandon the prophets." And I'm like, "Of course it does. It makes all the sense in the world because she never gave a fuck about the prophets. She never gave a fuck about her call. She only gives a fuck about Kai Wynn. She's a self-serving, egotistical who only cares about her own power." And I would say that's also true with Marco, and I don't have any problem with that because I think that is very poignant commentary on a lot of real life figures who don't really give a fuck about what they claim to give a fuck about. And so in that way, he comes off as not as two-dimensional to me, but as realistic and commentary on a lot of real life figures.
There are certain real life figures that if they were fictional, I would say they're a two-dimensional character.
That's fair enough. that's fake news. I mean, that's fair enough. Anyway, let's go ahead and move over to the next storyline. Let's talk about Darrin's favorite character, Amos, Mr. Amos Burton. And I mentioned this before in previous videos that I like the storyline. It was great. It was probably the one that was most true to the books, but it was probably my least favorite. Well, maybe not the Alex Bobby. Maybe the Alex Bobby was probably. I don't know. But I did like aspects of it. Like particularly his character journey. I liked I think I completely agree with what Alyssa said earlier about Clarissa was much better this season, and it was actually, I thought it was improvement on the books, the way that Amos was trying to save Clarissa because he kind of saw a bit of himself in her, and I liked the sort of examination of how he's like gave no thought to just going and murdering some guy and stealing his stuff. And when Clarissa pointed out, it's like, well, he turned out to be an asshole to try to kill you, but what if he wasn't? And so he realized, oh fuck, I need to get back to my crew. And you start to see how he decays the further he gets away from his guiding star. And there's also that interesting dynamic with Clarissa kind of becoming his moral guide when she's like a mass murderer, and the irony in that. And I thought that was well played. But then, like, a lot of the story events did seem like, oh, this is shit that just needs to happen. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic story. Reminds me a bit like of The Road or The Walking Dead or something like that, where just random shit happens, people comes up and try to kill you randomly, and like the whole thing with security guards at the end that were like, oh, we're gonna, and how they all of a sudden ended up being, they came off as like a bunch of amateur rent-a-cops, and all of a sudden they ended up being like SEAL Team 6 or some bullshit, and like and attack them, and that felt a bit contrived to me. But ultimately, like, I don't know, I think in this storyline also, the reason why I think I'd single it out is because it felt most detached from everything else that was going on, even Avicerella's storyline, which is strange because usually she's the most attached one, but she was actually plugged into the main storyline this season. It was Amos who was kind of most attached and just showing the ramifications of what Marco did. But even that, like, I didn't think was filmed very well because it didn't look like apocalyptic wasteland, because everything looked pristine and nice. And I think this is when the budget was showing. So, and as great as that fight scene was, it was filmed amazingly well. The choreographed, the cinematography, everything was amazing. But the story reasons behind it was kind of just like, let's just have some people fighting. And anyway, Don, we'll start with you first this time. Your feelings on Mr. Amos Burton.
So Amos definitely became one of my favorite characters over the seasons. You know, season 1 wasn't really sure about him, and then, you know, you start to learn more about him as the seasons go on. You find out, oh, he's not just Naomi's little lapdog. Okay, cool. So finally, you know, in the last 2 seasons, really, especially last season, you know, he really came more into his own. And then this season was him really on his own, except for when he decided, oh, you know, I got to go see the woman that tried to frame my boy and kill us all. Okay. You know, look, I still don't give a fuck about Clarissa, but Amos is my guy. You know, he's the guy who, even though he really doesn't have a moral compass, he is still trying to do the right thing for the most part. And again, superb acting, because, you know, there were some quieter moments in the show where, you know, if you don't have the right actor portraying that character, it all falls apart. You know, sometimes you see stunt casting where it's like, oh yeah, we want to, you know, just put this person in because they look good or whatever may have you. But no, you need someone who has the actual acting chops. And Wes Chatham, yes. You know, yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things where, yeah, what did he have the greatest storyline? No, but we learned a lot about his backstory that we didn't know. You know, we saw that he's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. And he's a survivalist. You know, if anyone could survive, you know, that fuckface Marco throwing rocks at the planet, it is definitely Amos Burton. So, hey, I'm glad with the storyline, although I really wish he would have left Peaches in Providence or wherever the hell, you know, that you know, the damn rich place was.
What does a woman have to do to earn your respect, your redemption? I mean, she saved all of humanity, and that's not enough for you. Now she saved Amos. Anyway, who was
Listen, she went against Holden. You go against Holden. No.
Somebody said, oh yeah, Doc says Don doesn't want to include Clarissa in his tribe. Oh, poor Clarissa. Anyway, I did want to address Made in Brooklyn 1975 had a question. How does Marco's attack on Earth make sense? He's crippled Earth's ability to produce food the belt needs and the ability to pay for goods that the belt produces, and most belters can't go to new worlds. It doesn't, and a lot of people brought this up, and Marco was like, yeah, we got Ganymede, it'll be self-sufficient in 5 years, and other people were like, well, what about in the meantime? I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it, be fine. In other words, he doesn't give a fuck, and he hasn't thought this through, and most belters are too brainwashed drinking his Kool-Aid to actually notice that it was a huge mistake. That's the answer. Anyway, Alyssa, what are some of your thoughts on good old Amos and Clarissa?
Amos, yeah, I definitely would not go as far as you did, Mark, and say it was my least favorite storyline. There's definitely at least one that I'm sure we'll get to that is clearly less favorite to me than this one. And I did appreciate getting to see getting to learn more about Amos. And as you pointed out, Mark, like getting to see kind of how he degrades, like being away from Holden. And I found that very interesting. I didn't mind Peaches this year. I hated her in season 3. Not for the same reasons Don hated her, I don't think. I just thought the actor was terrible, and I thought the character was terrible. I still think the actress is not that great, but put her with Amos, and like you put someone with Amos and make everyone a better character. I just feel like, or more interesting character. You know, I felt like their dynamic was really good this year. I liked it. And how could you not like the scene at the end? Like if you didn't have Peaches, then you wouldn't have that really hilarious scene in the finale where Amos is like, so Holden, you remember that time? I love that scene. And he was like, oh, okay, I'm glad you feel that way. I'm glad you're cool with it. Come on, Peaches. That was such a great scene. Like, how could you not want that? I 100% agree with you. And Mark, you and I talked about this in length on the episode 9 review. I believe that was the week that Darrin had to leave early, and you and I were left just talking about how stupid it was that those rental cops all of a sudden became like this elite Navy SEAL force or whatever. I just did not buy that at all. It was so contrived, so forced. And I knew it was going to happen because I knew that they had to have this dramatic escape. Like they couldn't just leave. But they needed to set those guys up as more formidable in the first place. They set them up as jokes. So I just didn't buy it at all when all of a sudden they're this unstoppable foe that you have to escape from. I just didn't buy it. But you know what? Honestly, I think that's really the only negative thing I have to say about Amos's storyline. Overall, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting to know Amos. And again, this is going back to what I said earlier, that in my mind, I assumed Amos was going back to reunite with the crew by the end of the season and would be with them in season 6. So given that, I was really interested to learn more about him and to see his interactions with, I'm just going to keep calling her Peaches now, on Earth. So I overall really did actually enjoy this storyline.
All right, so let's go ahead and move. Oh wait, have we?
How dare all of you besmirch Amos's storyline? It was the greatest of the storylines this season. I mean, look, I know there were definitely some issues in pacings and moments and stuff with that, and I can't completely disagree with all of those. It is one of those that I am glad there was a significant amount of time spent And I think there was this season on this particular storyline. Amos is by far the most interesting character, the best character on the entire show, and whoever else is as different is just wrong. No, if anything, this season has showed up just how good an ensemble cast this show really is, that everybody can really pull weight and emotion and storyline. So obviously I'm being very facetious with that statement, but yeah, I enjoyed honestly getting a chance to look back at Amos's storyline, where he came from, how he sort of became who he was. And I thought we got a good glimpse into that, of what he had left behind, why he left. Eric, who didn't impress me as a villainous, dangerous person in the beginning. By the end, I could see where he was. I could see where his skills lay. I could see where he would kind of like work that to become that position of where he was. So, I mean, even if things didn't totally make sense or work for me in the beginning, I think by the end, sum total, all of that really did. I liked Amos realizing that he needs to be a mentor to someone else in a way, to help someone else who is in trouble and guide them through, becoming the better version of themselves. So I like that whole bit with Clarissa. While I'm really bummed that the collapsed jail did not turn out to be a Kung Fu master type battle to the top with a giant battle at the end with an armored helicopter, I still thought that it was great. Konachek, as that who was hilarious in that, and very dangerous and psycho, and that was a great element to have. Yeah, one of the downsides is this was the opportunity to show the devastation on Earth from a first-hand basis, and we did not get that. I mean, that was an 80s, 90s sci-fi. It was an episode of Stargate SG-1, which I like. I'm actually rewatching that right now just for fun. But the set on top when they come up and this was the destroyed Earth, that's what this was. This was an old SG-1 set that they just pulled off and dusted off and put a new green screen in the background. That was a little kind of disappointing. And so we never really got that kind of perspective. But we did get to see, again, where Amos came from, how much he has grown, what he appreciates being back with the crew, and how much he needs the crew as much as they really need him. And so that whole coming back bit was wonderful. Clarissa did a better job this season than previously. She had a couple of my favorite moments in that episode 9. While I have to agree with how did the rental cops become suddenly a powerful force? And like you said, Alyssa, you were expecting that they had to have a battle. Why couldn't they just get in the ship and leave and have it be fine? One, so they could give us that beautiful long single combat shot coming up and around and down the ramp into the basement of the house, which was really cool. We got to see Clarissa beat the crap out of a bunch of guys. I loved him pulling everyone back and shooting and going in the next one. And when that one girl went down, he grabbed her and she pulled out her handgun and shooting at the end, like constant barrage of bullets. I mean, it was a very visceral scene. So that was fun, even if it was a little ridiculous. And like you said, Alyssa, the whole thing with Clarissa was totally worth just that last scene with Holden, and that rope-a-dope that he does is just was too perfect. So did it work for me? Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I thought that we had some great bits. We got really to see multiple sides of Amos, who comes across as very flat and is in fact super layered. And that is the one thing I really love about how Wes Chatham plays the character. Is again, it's even in it, and also this is a person who scares the crap out of me. I mean, if he was a villain, he would be an effective villain. I'm much happier that he is on the Rossi side of things.
There's one thing I do have to correct you on, Darrin, is that we didn't get to see Clarissa kill a bunch of people. We got to see the aftermath.
Yes.
And that's why I'm convinced that the actress, for some reason, they just can't do action scenes with her, because the other scene where she killed the man, they just had a close up of her going. And then this time
that was the fantastic Mr. Fox homage that nobody else got. That's what they were going for. No, that's a good point. Though I have to say, I love the little scene with her and Eric at the top of the ship when he's telling, like, well, where did he meet you? He was like, well, I was serving multiple life sentences for multiple murders. And Eric does that beautiful slow look over at her. Like, what? That was one of my favorite little moments in that whole episode. That just one tiny little thing. So anyway, since I missed that part of our episode 9 discussion, I wanted to throw that out.
And also the time when after she murders all the people, Eric's is like, remind me not to piss her off.
Yes.
All right. Matthew Ross says her mods make her gassy in an explosive way.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and move over to the next storyline. Let's talk about Alex Kamal and Bobby Draper. And I don't know. Like, here's the thing about this storyline. I think it was good at first. I think for the first, in fact, this took up a lot of the first 3 episodes, and I actually liked it to begin with, and it did set up Admiral Silverterre and the whole thing that happens at the end with all the Martians, which was great. I just was, as a book reader, because I knew what was going to happen at the end with the Martians. It's just like, hurrah. And I was wanting more of that, though. I was wanting more setup. I thought they would delve deeper into that. And I think it's episode 4, they're like, oh, they're going to do this exchange, so we need to go follow them from the Razorback. And then they just sent the rest of the season just sitting there in the Razorback. And that was a huge disappointment. I thought there was like, come on, do something. Like, I thought they were going to explore this Martian conspiracy more, build up to it, foreshadow it a bit more, and that's what I was waiting for, but they were just waiting for at the very end, we're like, oh, and the Martians just show up. I mean, they did foreshadow that a little bit with Monica Stewart putting it together that they were the real power behind Marco. And that is something, because I know earlier, Darrin, I think it was you, mentioned something about how Marco just comes off as, I can't remember the right term you used, but something like just a poser, I believe. And that's because he is. That's because the real power behind him is these Martian splinter group, and they were basically using him to create chaos so they could get away without anyone noticing, and of course to get the proto molecule, which, I'm convinced they could have gotten it themselves if they really wanted to, but they wanted Marco to throw the whole solar system into chaos. And when they were leaving him behind, he's like, I have yours, you have your system, and I have mine. I think in their minds they're like, well, you're probably all going to die anyway, but we don't give a fuck. You're probably all going to starve because you're killing all your resources, but that's fine by us because we're starting our own empire. And I kind of wish that they foreshadowed that a bit more instead of having Alex and Bobby just sitting on the Razorback fucking around for 6 episodes. Now, I did really like that scene where they did destroy the Belter ship, where Bobby came out and like mauled down all these stupid Marcus supporters easily, and then Alex planted a bomb on their ship and destroyed it. That's a cool scene. But then the rest of it, they're just sitting on the ship, like making commentary. Ooh, there goes Naomi. Ooh, what's going down on Earth? Ooh, and then of course, it all ends in Alex's death, which was obviously thrown in there, is obviously not planned for, and it actively interfered with the tone. Like, you had this emotionally powerful story with Naomi, and this emotionally powerful story with Drummer, and oh yeah, Alex dies, whatever. It really comes off as an afterthought, and it was a poor decision on the writer's part to to have him killed off in this way when they decided to fire the actor. And you hear them trying to justify it. It was like, oh, it fits in the theme of the season of family and people sacrificing themselves for family. I'm like, okay, sure, yeah. But it's obvious that wasn't planned out for, because it does seem like an afterthought. It wasn't given the proper weight, proper justice. There's too many other things more important that's going down in that episode. And we already talked about the Bobby saving Naomi scene, which was an amazing payoff to Bobby Draper's storyline. And also having her be Avasarala's liaison at the end, all dressed up, all snazzy and working for her. Like, it was a cool payoff as well. But yeah, they didn't. They did Alex's shabby. And plus, Alex, and at the start of the storyline, he had Alex, like, Bobby was being totally an asshole to Alex for no good reason. That was weird. And Alex is like, and I was just talking, I just did my book to show comparison for the first episode, and how in the books Alex like realized how he mistreated his ex-wife and how she had every right to be upset with him. But in the show, he's like, oh, don't worry, I'll get back together with her again. I'm like, you're playing him off as an asshole. Like, so I think they really did his character dirty, and maybe they did that on purpose to get back at Cass Amber. I don't know. But anyway, Alyssa, we'll start with you, since you indicated that there's another storyline you liked less.
Yeah. And actually, there's two storylines I like less than the Amos one, this being one of them. So the way I would sum up this storyline is like, it just fell flat on its face. And I actually disagree that it started off good. I complained about it in our seasons 1 or episodes 1 through 3 review discussion. And for exactly what you just mentioned, that Bobby was being an asshole to Alex for no reason. There was just one cliche after the other, where Alex goes in and watches the college lecture and like talks to the guy afterward. Like, it was just cliche after cliche. And how they had, when Bobby pointed out that guy, what's his name, Admiral? What's the guy's name? Mark.
There.
Yeah. When she first pointed it out, and Alex goes, "Oh, but he's a true Martian patriot. He would never be." I'm like, bad guy. So that's like the classic, like, bad guy. Oh, he would never betray them. Whatever. He was a bad guy. And as you said, Mark, and I hadn't read the books, but now knowing how it ended, I'm like, what a waste. Like, they could have been building up to that more. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more of the Martian payoff, at least sprinkled in there a little bit, instead of Alex and Bobby sitting on the Razorback just commenting on things, as you said, Mark. Like, they're basically watching the news going, oh, well, that sucks. Oh, and then telling little stories about, what was it she told? Like, about a mouse or something? I don't remember anymore.
A pet rat, yeah.
Pet rat, yeah. And just like pointless things now. And just like, and then I didn't get to talk about Alex's death live. I did talk about it a lot in the chat last week. And there were other people in the chat last week saying that, well, they did the best they could with the situation. No, that's the absolute worst thing they possibly could have done with that situation. I 100% agree with you, Mark, that it actively interfered with the story by putting that in there. It would have been better to have him die off screen if that's what you're going to do. No, I couldn't think of a worse way for them to handle it. That is the absolute worst way they possibly could have done it. There's better ways they could have handled it. I know it's a shitty situation with the actor, but there's way better ways they could have handled it. Having him die off screen would have been better to that. And honestly, I actually didn't catch that he died until Holden was like, oh, it's too bad Alex died. I was like, what? He did what? When did that happen? Like, I didn't even catch. I mean, he's just sitting there going, oh, shit. And then people in the chat last week mentioned the blood, and I had to go back and watch to even notice the blood. So I had no idea he died. I was like, what? What do you mean he died? It was a terrible death scene. And I went back and rewatched it knowing that he died, and it's still a terrible death scene. It is terrible. It was, to me, very clear. I don't give a shit what the showrunners say or whatever. It was very clearly done after the fact. It was, it was just a very disappointing storyline, and it's a shame because I like both those characters. I love Bobby, and I like Alex. So it was kind of a waste of these characters, especially now knowing this is Alex's last season. What a waste. So definitely my least favorite storyline, without a doubt. So the question when you ask, does it work or not work? Definitely did not work.
This does not work. This, and something I mentioned last week too, is that in the novels there was a whole storyline about Alex and Bobby going to save the Martian Prime Minister because Marco's people were trying to kill them. A lot of people are like, why did they leave that out of the show? I mean, I suppose maybe they thought it was would divert from the main storyline, but I don't think any more so than Amos fighting off a bunch of rent-a-cops. And I would have at least given Alex and Bobby something to do, and they could have tied it into the main storyline better, and they could have foreshadowed the whole Martian separation thing more. But yeah, so I had to agree that I don't know if I'd say the storyline doesn't work, but I would say it barely works. But anyway, Darrin, let's get your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, the storyline half works. In some ways, the beginning part of the season, I think, works better with the two of them. Though I agree, Bobby is unnecessarily mean to Alex and pushing him off. Though, as Matthew Ross in the chat had brought up, there was the cowboy bar, which I had wiped from my memory because it was horrible and terrifying on so many levels. And that's a reason to be mad at Alex if you're meeting up at that bar. I mean, I'm just going to say that right now. But I did like the kind of mystery stuff. We're trying to figure things out, you know, how Bobby's really got her whole murder board up, and like, these are the people that are connected and they keep coming up. You know, that was impressive. That was very cool. I did like the Bobby taking out the pirates bit when you think that they're just dead in the water and the door opens up and she's in her armor and just mows them down. I mean, how could you not have loved that? But yeah, then after that, it becomes just sitting in space. It gets very boring. I also have to agree with Alex's initial positioning, going back to Mars to connect with his wife, and just shows up, doesn't even call ahead of time. I mean, he was just an insensitive a-hole. And look, if there was a plan to kill him at the end, a discussion was we're focusing on family. I mean, it makes sense because he was a douche in the beginning of the season. But to me, that also means that, well, then as producers, did you know what was going on? And that's why you were thinking of writing this character off, which, you know, that becomes a whole different story right there. So the death on him is definitely not planned at all. It was very obviously done in post without the actor and other scenes reshot. You can't talk about how important the Rocinante is because it's got a Earthers and Belters and Martians when there is, as that speech is being said, no Martian on the Rossi, especially if you're having Bobby be your assistant and Bobby isn't going on the Rossi, which is where I was expecting her to go. That's kind of my only downside with what happens with Bobby on that. But I think that is one of those where Bobby was expected to be with Avasarala, but now she may have to go and be on the right. You know, they're going to have to jumble some stuff around because of this switch, because of what happened with Alex. And I think you're right. Ultimately, it probably would have been better to recast him. If anything, give him some facial damage and have him have a beard or no beard next season, or a different hairstyle, and just look, just do a roadie. Just have him walk in and be like, "Hey, it's Alex, it's me. I know. Let's just get on, right?" And we can do that. I think that might have been the best choice, because it does suck to have to say goodbye to the character after all this time. Especially since we really didn't get that Alex story the same that we've gotten everybody else's story, I think.
There was a clarification I want to make. I made Brooklyn 1975 in the chat asked, the showrunners are denying that they killed Alex off after they had wrapped for the season. Well, no, not directly, but they refused to engage in this conversation, and they seem to imply that, oh yeah, this fits perfectly with the theme of the season and everything. And I think all of that was definitely not conversations they had before. I think there's all justifications they were coming up with their decision to kill him off after the controversy came. And now there's trying to, like, if you watch the after show, like the way they talk is like, oh yeah, they sound like, oh, this is what we had planned all along, but they never say that outright, because it's obviously not. Anyway, Don, what were some of your feelings on the Bobby Draper? If you're still there.
How could Don not be talking about Bobby Draper?
Yeah, what is going on here?
Yeah, I gotta be
I'm
Don.
not talking about Bobby Draper. What is happening?
Bobby.
Okay,
Bobby.
so. First off, not enough Bobby. Second, not enough Bobby. And third, Alex is gone, and even though we shouldn't say good riddance. But damn it, man. They didn't have the two of them do shit all season. You know, it was okay, there's a problem. All right, look, go be a spy. I don't know how to be a spy. Well, damn it, learn how to be a spy. Okay, I've done spying. They're trying to kill me now. Okay, let's go tell Holden. All right. Yeah, we're on our way to see Holden, and just exactly what this gentleman was doing here. Okay. All right. Not going fast enough. Gotta go faster. We can't go too fast, but we gotta go fast. You know, it was like, honestly speaking, they were a waste of storyline. This season, they were kind of a waste. So, yeah, you know, yes, I stroked out because of that whole damn storyline. People in the chat are saying that I stroked out. Yes, I stroked out because of that damn storyline.
All right.
I mean, I can't disagree that it was wasted, other than it introduced the Martian big bads in the beginning, and Bobby saved Naomi. Other than that, I don't know what the storyline really accomplished this year.
The space people in chat says give exposition is all they did. That was their job. They were the exposition group. They were like the judges in the Muppet Show up in the corner. Just let us know what's going on.
As I said, I did like their blowing up the Marco's ship. Like, that was a cool scene. And there was a couple dialogue scenes with them where I actually liked the one when she was talking about her dead rat, because it really got into the characters of how devastated they were that Mars is following the ship, that there could be this many traitors. So I thought it was a good character moment for both of them. But
well, yeah, I mean, again, that Martian intrigue stuff was cool, and if we could have seen more of that, that would have been so much more interesting. But that was only for like 2 or 3 episodes in the beginning, and then they saved the rest of it till the end.
I think I'll agree that this is the weakest storyline of the season, but I don't agree that it was a complete waste. I think it was wasted potential is how I would describe it, because they could have done more with it, but I think it did serve a purpose, and there were some good moments in it. If it wasn't always done correctly, and especially the way they ended Alex's storyline was awful. But all right, so let's go ahead and let's talk about Don's favorite place. All right, let's talk about Avasarala and her sort of journey. I I don't know what to think about this storyline. Like, I like that. See, this is Avasarala wasn't a viewpoint character in the book. So in the book, she only appeared in 2 scenes. The one where Amos called her Chrissy. She's like, "Don't call me Chrissy. I'm not your stripper." And it's like, "I'm a member of Parliament, but not your favorite stripper." And the other one was at the end where they had that party, and she was. Yeah, although she was a kind of a dick to Holden at the party instead of being like, "This is the crew." Anyway, but so they kind of invented this whole storyline for this show, and I think it worked. I think I think her relationship with Delgado was interesting. I do find it a little bit contrived, the way that no one wanted to listen to her after she figured out what Marco was up to, and the fact that Nancy Gal was like refusing to take her calls. Those kind of seemed a bit contrived in order to create tension. And the whole thing with David Pastor seemed kind of like an unnecessary character. Like, he shows up and he's like, "Oh, I'm the new Secretary General, but I'll listen to what you have to say." And then the next episode is like, "Fuck it, let's kill the Butlers, kill them all." And, like, it seemed, I don't know, like, I don't think it was a total waste of time. It was just his own, that character, having that character that seemed, I don't know, weird. It seemed weird to me. I did like the moments of Avasarala, like, resigning and everyone choosing to make her the Secretary General because they saw her worth. I suppose that was the payoff, and I did appreciate that. But I don't know. Did this storyline work? I'm going to have to say yes, because it mainly had the viewpoint of the asteroid attack, and through that it worked. And like the scene where we saw like them talking to Nancy Gow, and we see the asteroid hit and everyone fucking died. Like, that was an intense scene. But it could have been better. So I think it worked, but it could have been better. Darrin, what's your opinion on the Secretary General? What they call it? The former and future queen.
Former and future queen, right? Well, again, she's a member of Parliament, not your favorite stripper. She can be both. And yeah, I mean, come on, you gotta love Avasarala. She is a great character. It was interesting to see her in kind of her post-election mood. It was annoying of her, kind of, and surprising that she was pushed off onto Mars so easily and kind of ignored. The fact that we see that being ignored is more of a administration staff as opposed to the president or the Secretary General doing that. And I love having that moment where she took Avasarala's call and was like, "What's going on? What it is? Let's do this," and really showing that respect for where Avasarala had come from and what she really does bring to the table. The fact that we have a meteor strike right there that takes out the previous, or the middle Secretary General there, was very cool. There were a lot of really good moments, I think, with her storyline. And I think it was important to trace her from being pushed off to the fringe to how smart she is to seeing things and putting things together, how needed her balance of experience and wisdom, the time that she has put in to know, yes, revenge is important, but you can't be stuck. You can't be focused so much on revenge that you make even larger mistakes. Her resigning, those were all great moments. It did seem a little stretched out at times, yes, eventually we did get to hear the punchline for the Belcher joke. It was never that funny to begin with. And I felt bad that they just had us hanging on for a poor joke like that. But it does make sense with the way that the arc of the interactions between Earth and Belt and Mars, ends up playing out. So does it work? Yeah, I think it does work. I agree. Our transportation minister, temporary president, was kind of a waste, only because they didn't play out those differences. They didn't have the time to do it. It was, hey, let's do this, and then now we must kill everybody, immediately going too far. And I think that got a little pushed and a little rushed. But outside of that, I think that it worked. At least, from my standpoint, I enjoyed seeing those scenes, and I wanted to see how that. You had to see how the upper layer of governance was going to respond to everything going on. So you needed these moments. I think they put in just enough time. Maybe a little bit more would have been necessary, but I don't think they needed to spend much more time on it because it really was more of a background story, and it didn't need to be taking center stage at any point.
I did want to address Sentient in the chat saying hated how they just brushed past the coup on Luna, but it wasn't a coup. The military general made it very clear it was a vote of no confidence, like they did with Chancellor Valoran and then the Phantom Menace.
That's the only reference we need. Phantom Menace? Oh, okay, now we all know what it is.
Yeah.
We didn't know it then either, to be honest.
Anyway, Don, your feelings on the Queen.
I believe it is the once and future Queen. Is the actual phrase.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Kind of like the King Arthur thing. So
at least she doesn't have like 16 different titles like Daenerys does. But anyway,
yeah. Look, this was a difficult season, obviously, for Sorella, because here she is finally in a place where everything is not coming up Millhouse. She lost the election, so she's been kind of blackballed to Luna. But if she hadn't been blackballed and kind of tossed into the wasteland, she might have been dead. It's because Nancy Gao didn't have any respect for what she brought to the game, that her and her whole cabinet got wiped out, and we got transportation secretary as the guy, right? So it's one of those things where you're like, well, hey, finally the Queen is back on her throne where she belongs, and what the hell? I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah. So finally the Queen is back where she belongs, and I'm sorry, is there something on my lens?
Yeah, it looks like it.
What the hell? Okay. A bug just came out of nowhere. I don't even know where the hell the damn thing came from. Holy shit. All right. These cats aren't doing their damn job. Yeah, so Nancy Gao did not respect the game, and she got killed for it, and then we got the guy who didn't deserve the job being there, right? So now, finally, Sorella is there, and she's trying to give sound advice to not be what Marco is, and her, having to say, hey, look, I lost my damn husband. Cool, yeah, good riddance to him anyway. I lost my damn husband because of all of this. And now here you are trying to expand a war instead of contract it. And she made the tough call and was just like, you know what, I'm done. I can't be a part of this. I'm not going to be a part of this. And you have to give credit where credit is due. I think the only thing we were missing is her classic line, "Shut the fuck up." Any time where we hear Sorella say "Shut the fuck up," you know it's about to be something special. So that was pretty much about the only thing we were really missing from the storyline. Look, she's back on top where she belongs, and can't wait to see how this all ends up. Even though, yeah, things are in a precarious situation right now, thanks to that filthy belter and his fucking filthy belter son and all the rest of those bastards that should be. You know what? Oh God, I hope the ring rapes come for them.
The ring race? Are they going to come through the ring? Anyway.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said ring rapes, and I was like, that's going a little far. Okay. No, ring rape, that makes more sense.
All right, we got a super chat, $10 super chat. Thank you so much from Made in Brooklyn, 1975. So it's got to run, but really fun chat to everyone. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so Alyssa, your thoughts on Avasarala?
Okay, first I just have to bring this up, a little side topic, because I am doing a complete rewatch of all of the X-Men movies, and I had no idea that she was in The Last Stand.
She was?
Yeah, I watched it the other day. I was like, oh my God, Avasarala! She's not in it that much. Okay. She like works at the lab with that guy who's trying to take all the mutants' powers away. He's got and she's like the second in charge of that lab, but she's hardly in it. It was very disappointing because I was looking for those, really witty Avasarala lines, but she doesn't really have that many lines, and the movie sucks. But anyways, I had to bring that up because I had no idea.
I do remember that she played the Admiral in Star Trek Beyond.
Did she?
Yeah. She played the Admiral who gave Kirk his orders. It's like, Avasarala is ordering Kirk.
Oh, yeah, I think I do remember that now. Yeah. No, I was just a little surprised. Oh, my God, Avasarala is in X-Men Last Stand. But anyways, as for her storyline in season 5, did it work? Yeah. I miss the old Avasarala stories. I miss the Avasarala of season 2 and even the first part of season 3. She had so many just really amazing lines. And she had a few. There was one you pointed out, Mark, where what's his face was saying, oh, well, Marco wouldn't let us live like that, or Marco wouldn't treat us like that. And she's like, oh, is that our role model now? That was a really great line. And I don't know, that secretary, transportation secretary really kind of pissed me off when he was just like, when Avasarala was making the point that, listen, my husband died. I have more reason than anybody to get emotional. Let's not get emotional. And his response is, oh, stop being emotional, you emotional woman. Stop it. And it was just like, fuck you. I hate this guy. I agree with what was said before about him being a waste of character. You may as well just jumped right to Avasarala being in charge. But I guess they needed to have this conflict. I think they still arguably could have had that conflict with Avasarala in charge, but then you wouldn't have been able to, I guess, to invade that one station. So they did invade that one station. What was that called?
It was Palace Station. Yeah.
Palace Station. So I guess that for plot reasons they had to do that. But otherwise, yeah, didn't love that they threw that character in. Just throwing this out there, a little interesting factoid. If that happened in the United States, Pete Buttigieg would be the president because he's a transportation secretary. Oh. But yeah, I did, and I also, I don't know, I feel like I was wanting a little bit more from her husband's death. I know that a lot of people hated the recast. I didn't mind the recast so much. I was fine with it. I would have kind of liked, and maybe that actor didn't want to come back, or they didn't want to recast him again, but I kind of would have liked to have seen something. I don't know, just for him to sort of die off screen, not because of him being an important character, but because Avasarala is such an important character, and his death really impacts her character a lot. I don't know. I felt a little lacking in that. So yeah, I just found myself wanting more. But overall, did it work? Yeah, sure, it worked. I didn't have a huge problem with it. It worked for the story. But I hope we get back to getting more Avasarala and her kick-ass lines in future seasons.
The one thing I will say, and I don't think it's much of a spoiler, but in the books, Arjun died the same way. He also was missing for a long time until Avasarala just realized that he was dead, and he died in the asteroid attack. And I kind of noticed this is something I couldn't talk about in season 4 without giving away spoilers, but I noticed how when season 4 ended with them having a big fight, it's like, because that didn't happen in the books where he had the big fight. Well, I'm not going with you to Luna. I'm staying on Earth. Like, that was like really cheesy foreshadowing. Oh, of course they had to leave them in the bad place before he dies, and that kind of irritated me about that scene, but I couldn't say it before without giving away spoilers. But I mean, I think his death is tragic enough. You don't need to put them at odds with each other when they die. But
well, no, because actually that final scene I did find really annoying because to me it struck as very inaccurate. I'm like, you married this person, you've been with them for a long time. Nothing she has done is really that far out of character. I mean, maybe she pushed something a little far, but not enough for you to go like, I'm going to leave. So yeah, the fact that didn't happen in the books and that was added as some sort of foreshadow, that annoys me even more now.
And he sounded exactly like that too. I'm going
to and that's part of the reason why, look, I was talking crazy about him earlier in the season. I was like, you know what? He's gone. Fuck him. I hope he's dead.
Yeah, and to be fair, that is, I think, due to bad writing. They were just trying to make it, it won't be even more tragic if they're at odds before he dies. And I'm just like, no. Anyway, Matthew Ross asks, how different is the destruction of Earth between the show and the books? Not much. I will say that the books make it very clear, more clear, that it's a bit more devastating. But the show could still do that. Because to be fair, I think most of the devastation they talk about how devastated Earth was by the asteroid attack comes in book 6. So maybe season 6 will cover this a bit more as well. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get to our final storyline of the evening. Let's talk about Camina Drummer. Camina, was it Captain now? Camina later. She now this storyline we sort of touched on, and I thought it was kind of slow and unnecessary to begin with, but I love where they took it. I think it was really well earned. I think it was a huge improvement over the books because it wasn't there, and I think it added a lot. That she had this dilemma that she had to choose between what was her previous family and her new family, and it was more complicated than just that. Though, of course, she was under the thumb of someone who had killed 2 of her mentors and was trying to kill one of her best friends, and she knew obviously that Marco was doing the wrong thing, and what Marco was doing was wrong for the belt. And she was fighting that instinct for her family to keep them safe, and because she was kind of her closest lover was kind of manipulating her into going in that direction. And it was quite tragic when they lost a member of the family, and quite tragic when her closest lover left her, and the family was split in 2. But it was kind of unnecessary evil, and it was also amazing when she actually did destroy Marco's ship and fucking kill Crawl. Thank God. That was an amazing moment. And when she called Holden, it was like, this is Drummer. Like, that was a kick-ass moment. It was a really great moment. I think it added a lot to the show. And I think that this ending would not have been as powerful as it was if it wasn't for all the earlier scenes that at first I thought were boring, but in retrospect, like watching the season again, I think you need those things to build to establish this family, to establish these characters, to establish their dilemma. And so without them, you wouldn't get how close-knit they are, and so it wouldn't have worked as well. So ultimately, I love this storyline, and I think it really did work. So Dom, let's start with your feeling about Drummer there.
One of the few belters worth a damn. Look, she was trying to be the voice of reason after realizing, like, yeah, you know what? Maybe the rest of these people are kind of fuck faces. So, she tried to turn the rest of the family around and got caught up in the bullshit with Marco and Naros. And then she was like, all right, well, I got to play the game the best way I can. And listen, let's be honest. She knew the moment that Serge stepped on to Marco's ship, he was basically a dead man walking. There was a time clock ticking on his life, and you could see it because it's like, all right, well, no one else had to exchange crew members. Why am I literally the only one that has to exchange a crew member? So it was like, all right, well, I see what it is. I'm going to try to bide my time. Hopefully I can get Serge back. But then I think she realized after a while, especially once she figured out what the plot with them trying to kill Naomi was like, oh, no, this isn't going to work. Serge is a prisoner there, and no matter what, we are all prisoners as long as we are aligned with Marco and Naros. So she made the hard call, and I don't think it was premeditated. I think it was a thing where it was in the moment, like, oh man, okay, well, do I stand up for what's right, and save the Rocinante and give them a fighting chance to save Naomi, or do I, be on the wrong side of history in order to possibly save Serge at a later date? And so I think in the moment she made the call that she thought was the best for all involved. And though it was a hard call, I think it was the right call. Look, there was no way Serge was getting off of Marco's ship alive. And unfortunately, a couple of people in her family did not want to see that. All they were thinking about is, oh, you sacrificed Serge, you sacrificed Serge. It's like, no, she didn't sacrifice Serge. She freed him in the only way that she possibly could.
Sorry, I just got to interject. I actually disagree with that assessment. I think that Serge would have been perfectly fine had she actually towed the line. And I think that's what her family were expecting. And I think that's Marco actually would have treated Serge great. He would have been best pals with them as long as Drummer didn't betray him. But the moment Drummer betrayed him is the moment Serge is dead. Like, so if Drummer never betrayed him, theoretically, he'd be alive and well.
Well, what I'm saying is he was always a hostage, though.
Yeah, he was a hostage, but he would be a well-treated one. Like, they're pretending that he's not.
No, but what I'm saying is, it's like, yes, he might have been under the false assumption that everything is all chummy, which is why when Marco took him into that,
the airlock.
He was like, no, she pledged to, our lives to you, yada, yada, yada. There's no way that she would ever do this, and so then it was like, well, yeah, well, he came to the realization too late, like that, no, this was actually happening. And so, And so it's just one of those things where there was no other way that it could play out. You know, it was like, yeah, okay, they told a line today, but what's going to be the next thing? Because with guys like Marco, there's always going to be another task, and the moment that you do not live up to task, okay, fine, kill him. So yeah, he might have been treated well and was like, oh yeah, everything's all buddy buddy. Hey, come eat with me, guy. You know, yeah. How was your day today, man? Scrubbing those panels or doing whatever task got you doing. Was it hard today? All right. Look, we'll try to lighten your load for you tomorrow, man. You know, I'll give you a couple extra hours off, or I'll give you the day off next time, okay, buddy? All right. Let's see what we got. Drummer doing in there. She's gonna be late, huh? I told her she can't be late, but she's going to be late anyway. Even I told her she cannot be late. Okay, fine. Hey, Serge. Here. Hey, I need you to send a message to Drummer for me. There would always been something. So yeah, there's no way that it would play out any differently, no matter what. Serge was a dead man from the moment Marco said, "Yeah, let's do a crew member exchange."
I'd still disagree with that. I still disagree. I think could have been a scenario where he would have been fine.
Listen, Alyssa talked about him being the Colombian drug lord before, and how many times have we seen in any of those drug movies where it's like, oh yes, no, keep your friend here, everything will be fine. You know, you keep your friend stays here with me, and I send the guy with you. You know, we make sure the deal goes down, everything bueno, huh? Hey.
Anyway, let's.
You want your money? I got your money right here.
Anyway, Alyssa, your thoughts on the whole Drummer storyline?
Well, excuse me. I complained about it all year. I didn't like it. I do like how it finished. I thought it was a strong finish for that character. But Mark just got up. I was going to disagree with something that he said earlier. When you were talking about how, excuse me. No, I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, how the early season storyline was necessary to establish that family. No, I just feel like the whole thing was tell and not show. Like I thought that they were family because the show told me so, and they told me so all throughout the season. The establishing the family early in the season was just them telling me about this history that supposedly happened between season 4 and 5 that I've never seen. So I just have to take their word for it. I didn't feel it. I didn't see it. It didn't feel real to me. It's just the show telling me that they're a family. I never felt it, especially with the decision at the end. Naomi, Holden, the Rosinante versus these people she met off screen after season 4. No brainer because you feel the connection she has with Naomi especially, but even some of the other members of the Rosinante crew. And these people, just the show told me they're her family. Okay, I guess I'll take your word for that. But it was a very much tell, not show situation where the show told me. And that's what the whole first part of the season was just telling me about their history together and to try to make me feel like they are family, but I never did because I never saw it. So the whole first 7 episodes, she wasn't always in it, thankfully. I think she skipped a couple episodes here and there. But throughout those first 7 episodes, the storyline was garbage for me personally. It was just didn't need to be there. Like if Drummer came in at season 7, it would have been just as impactful, or in episode 7 rather. That's probably a little bit of an exaggeration. They did need to set up her joining Marco and doing the career exchange and all of that. But I don't know. I felt her decision in the end still was very intense. Her turning on the end was very intense. I wish that what was her name? Carol, the lady who went over the Carol. She could have had a more satisfying death. she sucked. I would have liked to see a more satisfying death for her. But the ending was good. But throughout the season, I really was not into the storyline. I just anytime it would come on the screen, I'm like, I guess we got to sit through this until we get to the good stuff and just wait for it to be done. So,
all right. Well, that's another thing we'll have to agree to disagree on. So, was this the other storyline you were alluding to that's your second least favorite?
Yeah. And actually, when I first said I have one, this is the one I was thinking of. I forgot about Alex, and then I was
really?
Yeah, no.
Right.
Oh yeah, actually, Alex had like even less than this one because I did like how this one ended, but all throughout the season, I just didn't care. I don't care. I don't know who these people are. You met them off screen sometime. I guess they're your family because you tell me they are.
I was sold on. You weren't sold on that scene where they're all like having the floating water and like laughing about the floating water. I don't know. Personally, I mean, I get what you're saying. I did definitely feel that way at the start that it was telling, not showing that they were family. But I thought throughout the season they showed, and I think when you go back to her scenes about her, should I join Marco or not? I thought that was a strong dilemma. But that's just me. Anyway, actually, I would say this is probably my second favorite storyline of this season. But anyway, Darrin, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, not my second favorite. But I don't know. To me, that I'm really mixed on this one in particular because I think this storyline had some great potential that didn't always seem to really manifest. I have to agree completely with Alyssa and that I didn't feel that this was her family so much. I mean, yes, they had enough time and interactions as the season went on. You got to see that they were together. And obviously, more sensate sex scenes and mass space orgies is always going to sell that a little bit more, as has been remarked in the chat. But no, it was something that we were very much just told about. And it is one of the frustrations that I had about the family dynamic because anyone who knows Drummer knows all of the complications that would be involved in not only dealing with Marco, but then what happened with Naomi and then being ordered to go after the Rocinante. The fact that they didn't seem to grasp how difficult and strong that was, to me, always countered against the we're family idea. And maybe that's just something that I have brought to it after knowing the character for a while. And I wonder, Mark, since you have read the books, I know that she took over Michio Paz storyline in the books. And there is something about the idea. And again, I didn't read the book, but just knowing if this was a secondary character that probably had this polyamorous family and pirate thing and ended up having to do, and ultimately I would assume, a similar type of decision at the end. Do I, betray Marco and save this person or not? To me, in a sense, I could see where that might in some ways be a little bit more powerful because that is just someone who has a long established family choosing just to do the right thing or not. With Drummer, this is very much a competition of loyalties and familiar connections, which gives it a very different type of feel. So, like I said, I like a lot of the ideas. I like, the Belter polyamorous family. I like the fact that this is a group that's traveling out in space and they find it together and that's how they survive. There is something very cool about that. And of course, Cara G doing anything on the show is going to be awesome. And there were a lot of great moments when she finds Ashford's old ship and is having the drink and has the whiskey or the bottle that she had for him. There's a lot of great moments. And yes, when she turns at the end, and makes that decision, she does a lot of great stuff. There's just a lot of moments in between that, because I don't feel that family and I know the connection she has with these other characters, I'm questioning why her current family doesn't understand that about her. And to me, that was just a conflict with a lot of the scenes. And I think that probably undercut a lot of the intended emotion, because I'm just like, don't you understand how hard this is and what you're asking her to do? On this level and on this level and this level, you don't seem to understand it. So that was the only thing that kind of pulled me back. That, and I can't remember who mentioned it in the chat, and we talked about it, I think, at the last episode. Why did you not have a further Holden Drummer scene when she picks up and goes, Holden, this is Drummer? Oh, just even a face exchange back on how that meant to Holden would have been something, but they didn't do anything. That was wasted moment.
Indeed. I thought there was something in the chat earlier I wanted to touch on. Oh, yes. Someone was saying that sorry, I can't pronounce that username, but they were saying I needed Corral to get thrown out, flip the ship about, and fry her with the Epstein dry. Yeah, I suppose she did. She was such an annoying character, and maybe just getting whacked in the head behind with the fire extinguisher wasn't the best way to kill her off. But
also not having that wink into Bernie scene really disappointed me. But
I know, I'm still here.
Okay, Marco, she's listening.
Oh my gosh. But I don't know. I can kind of see why it works for like the story that it was a group effort to kill her, and that some people like Micho band together with Drummer. And there was a huge jump for her too, and that other dude on the other ship just started firing on the other ships. So I think it kind of works, but yeah, I want my damn weekend at Bernie's. Anyway, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I want to thank everyone for joining, everyone in the chat who joined, and of course you guys for joining. But not going to let you get away without giving this season a rating between 1 and 10. 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. For me, of course, I give this a 10. Even though I think there are some issues, Alex's death being very chief among them. Overall, when I look at it as a whole, I think it really worked. I think it was the most character-driven, most emotional, and of course the whole apocalyptic event was like something really shocking and new, and all the sort of social, political, and action suspense scenes I think worked better than any other season. I think it was the most cohesive season outside of maybe season 4, but season 4 wasn't as interesting as this season. So yeah, I give it a 10 out of 10. Alyssa, we'll go to you. Your rating for season 5.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because to me it's definitely a 9. Not quite a 10, but I was thinking, I think I gave season 2 a 10, so I might have to say season 2 is my number 1 actually, because I think I gave it a higher rating now that I think about it. Yeah, very good. 9. I would give it a 9.5. I know you don't believe in 0.5s, Mark, so I'll just say 9. If I have to choose between 9 and 10, I'll say 9. Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you said about it being the most cohesive season, besides possibly season 4, but it's better than season 4. So I feel, I don't know. I know there's complaints about the writing. I feel overall the writing has improved over time, personally. It's not perfect. It's not perfect in any show. But I felt the writing was very strong. I felt we got really strong character stories from characters that we didn't get to see as much before, or we saw them, but not in the forefront, in a primary role. And I like that. I love seeing Naomi. I love seeing more Amos backstory. So yeah, good solid 9, not quite 10 for me.
Great. And I do have to point out, Cardinal Doomsday in the chat, super chat of Australian dollars, $20. Thank you so much. Very generous donation. Cardinal Doomsday says I can only give it an 8. Which, 8's not a bad rating. The Space People gave it a 9. Doc Coburn also agrees an 8 that the Alex crap just lowered it. And Sentient's going as low as 7.5, maybe an 8. Anyway, Darrin.
Wait, Mark, there's a 10 you missed.
Did I miss a 10? Oh,
yeah.
Hold on.
From Prodigal Son. Prodigal Son. 10 out of 10.
Oh, Prodigal Son. I don't see that. Okay.
It's right below Cardinal Doomsday's, or no, it's not anymore. Where is it? Prodigal Son, 10 out of 10. Loved it. Episode 4 was better than the entire season of most shows.
Fair assessment. Anyway, Darrin, your rating for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Alyssa on this with a good solid 9. I was also thinking the same thing. I'd give it a 9.5 maybe, but I do remember how much you think that the 0.5s is just wussing out and not committing to an honest ranking. And yes, I completely have to agree. Episode 4 was an astounding episode, one of the tops of the season. And it is because there are so many excellent moments, but there are just a few things. Some of the pacing felt a little off, though. Like I said, I would be curious on a rewatch to see if that feels the same way when it's binged. Also, I just don't like Marco, so I'm going to have to ding it just because of that. But there was so much potential, and there were so many beautiful shots. Like I said, all of episode 4, that final bit with Naomi out in space, some of the intense just character work, Dominic Tipper's work within this. I mean, there was so much awesomeness that was in this. There's just a couple of small things, and I would have to say, including Alex's tacked on CGI death at the end there, does sort of pull things away. At the end of the season, it's like, yo, where did that come from? So that I have to pull it a little bit from the top there, but it's primo season. I can't wait to rewatch this season.
All right, Don, your rating for the season.
Wow. So I'm gonna go with a 9 for this one. Still very, very good season. But yeah, it did have a few problems with a few of the storylines dragging on. I mean, listen, I already told you they wasted my girl Bobby. Yeah, so I mean, look, Holden, not necessarily a waste, but they should have gave him a pet. Fine, give him this guy's bird, so this way, at least when they're doing the high G burns and all that stuff, maybe the bird can handle it better than the puppy would. Yeah, man, it just still excellent writing. For the most part, superior acting. And for the limited budget, I mean, because it does seem that they, had to be strategic with the budget in certain places. For what they didn't do in terms of special effects, I mean, you really didn't need it that much, but when they used it, it looked fantastic, which is what you want out of a show or any medium for that matter. So yeah, like I said, I was happy with it overall. I'm going with a 9.
9's all around except for me. I defy you with a 10. Anyway, now, but we all love the season, so and we all ranked it pretty high, if I remember correctly, in our final rankings. So yeah, so pretty successful season with a few issues here and there. Anyway, thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Again, thank you so much, everyone in the chat. And let's say our goodbyes, where people can find you, what you're up to. Alyssa, if you want to give a quick plug or what you might be up to.
Well, not really up to anything. I do have one video that I posted on my former channel, the Acton Tomko channel. I just did a top 10 of 2020 TV shows, which now we're over a month away from 2020. But that's the only thing I have going on. And I will look forward to seeing you guys in a future discussion. I'm sure we'll be back. I guess there's nothing particular in the works, but I will.
WandaVision.
Yeah, I would love to do WandaVision. If anyone's doing WandaVision, I would love to be a part of that. Yeah, just thanks for having me. And I do plan to launch a new channel later this year, but it's a few months away. So for now, I will be around on these different discussions.
Hi, I'm D, and I'm the one they're talking about WandaVision about. My channel is D's Reviews. We actually have a big season 3 review of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. happening next Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific. Very excited to jump into that with Rob from Smirking Gun, who popped in the chat earlier on, and author Corey Shoemaker as well as with us. So very exciting stuff. I am in the midst of doing paperwork and tax work and grant proposals, so I am really enjoying WandaVision, and if I get a chance to stick my head up out of the water, I would love to do a special, so keep an eye on my channel. I will do announcements out, or you can actually catch me on Twitter a lot right here at Darrin Jakes. And then we'll toss this over to this man here. Oh, one thing real quick before Dawn. If you guys rewatch the season, watch the opening animation bit. It changes from episode to episode and gives you the devastation for Baltimore before the impact. It shows Marcos moving from the belt all the way up towards the gate, episode by episode. There's a lot of cool stuff that happens there and is really fun to rewatch, especially knowing what's about to happen.
And apparently, I've also been told, I didn't figure this out myself, that if you look at the ring in the intro, if you zoom in on it, it says MCR in ships approaching Laconia.
Ah, see, something worth watching.
Anyway, Mr. Don Willi.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for having me, Mark. And, you can find me with this guy here on Tuesday discussing season 3 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And at some point, somewhere in the future, not sure exactly when, but sometime this year, you can find me on my channel, Dawn of Ice and Fire, where I will be resuming coverage of Game of Thrones prequel series, House of the Dragon, and I'll be doing character bios and giving backstories on the Dance of the Dragons, etc., etc. But if you want to follow me on Twitter for periodic tweets where I make fun of somebody or say something clever, you can find me at @DonWilli. That is IDonWilli. And Mark, take it away.
Cool. So I'm Mark. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity. If you're finding me for the first time, I do reviews on The Expanse. The Expanse Season 5 is over. You can find my Season 5 overall review in addition to this video. And I shall be doing a book-to-show comparison series where I go through each episode of Season 5 and compare it to a novel. So it will not contain spoilers from future books. It will just focus on this particular book. And I already recorded my video for for episode 1 of season 5, and then I'll be doing every other episode of the season as well. And I also cover other shows like Star Trek and Breaking Bad. At the moment, I just recorded my review for season 5 of Breaking Bad. Jesus Christ, what a great season! And also The Outer Limits and other stuff like that. So be sure to check out my channel for that. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time. And Don, you don't get the last word. I do. God damn it. Anyway. Damn.